Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we are going to be discussing the 2023 election. There's a lot to discuss with that. And then we're also going to be discussing last night's debate and kind of a lot of the primary updates that are going on with last night's debate. And just a political stream. Many of you might not know, but many of you do know that I was writing about politics before I was writing about, the intricacies of church ecclesiastical, maneuvering. And the reason why I can do one competently is because I understand the politics, and it's the same exact playbook that the Democrats are running in this country. It's the same exact playbook being ran by these liberals who are infiltrating the church. So that is why we're going to talk about this. And I honestly, love the intersection of Christianity and politics, and the Christian nationalism debate just comes more naturally to me, and I'm sure to you as well, because of, this is just getting back to what Christians have always believed about politics and disentangling us from much of the anti-Christian ideas that have infiltrated politics and our political thinking, especially in the church. So,
Yeah, I mean, I literally just read today how Calvin writes about the the magistrate interfering with the church to correct it, and the church correcting the magistrate. So the whole intersection of church and state. I mean, yeah, Calvin's ideas, and when they're rebranded by Stephen Wolfe, all of a sudden they're controversial. So
yes,
always fun.
and it's funny because Stephen Wolfe doesn't really, he's not inventing something new rather than just explaining what a lot of Protestants already believe, but that's very controversial. So before we get into that, I want to let you know, Evangelical Dark Web, Christian news gathering, commentary ministry. You can support us over at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join, linked in the description below. And also, you should get on our socials. We are live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Rumble. So we'll be you can follow us there. Links in the description as well. So 2023, November 7th, not a very good day for Republicans. Is there any silver lining on from Tuesday? Let's kind of start with the positive.
Um, okay,
Governor Tate
going.
Reeves, he
That's not a
won.
positive. Um,
Well, it is a positive because I don't see Mississippi being a red state for that much longer. So I mean, I know what you're thinking. Conventional wisdom says this is a deep South state, but it's also one of the least white states in the union. I'm kind of surprised it's
It's
as
also the
Republican as it
most
is.
obese state in the union, the poorest state in the union.
Has one of the highest abortion rates. I saw the black abortion rates,
Well, that explains it.
and Mississippi was like astronomical. It's horrible. We're gonna get into that issue a little
So
bit later, but
silver linings. I was listening to Red Eagle Politic, and
oh
he
man,
basically,
his breakdown was terrible.
well, yes and no. He basically said his outcomes were basically he basically would say that the election went as expected, which means you didn't overperform, which is it's in itself a disappointment. It's kind of like it's kind of like the red wave that never was. You should be outperforming your polls, but you're not, despite a horrible economy, World War III on the horizon, sexual degeneracy running rampant. Like, these are factors that should be leading to outperformances, and that's just not the case. From a polling standpoint, I guess it was as expected. The I guess the abortion lobby winning in Ohio, that was as expected. Pennsylvania going blue or retaining their judge, that's expected. So
Virginia, again, that was going to
a
be
little bit
tight
of it, yeah.
regardless. And Tate Reeves winning's expected, and so is Andy Bashir winning. That's also expected, is what you're saying.
Well, if you were looking at the data going in, then yes, it's not, the Republicans did not outperform expectations. They just underperformed.
hopes.
Yes.
So that's an interesting way to put it. If you're in the live chat, we will be interacting with a lot of chat tonight. I mean, it's politics night, so obviously we want to engage and debate. We also have a call-in link. If you're a subscriber over at evangelicaldarkweb.org, you can get on the live stream. That is a link for you to do that in the description below. So, with that said, Tate Reeves, not a super popular governor in the state of Mississippi. He retains his seat. Uh, that's your pot. That's like the crowning victory of the night, I guess, for Republicans.
And some New York victories.
There were some small victories in New York. Some stuff going on in Texas that was victorious as well. Uh, if we're only winning in states that are where people are moving to as a result of the realignment and people moving with their feet, that's not going to be good in the long term. But Tate Reeves, again, I see Mississippi going blue in the near future. I could see a state like Kansas also going blue in the future. Because you got to keep in mind that the whole red state, blue state phenomenon is relatively new in American history. Really, I would say that the 2000 elections really would solidify the red state, blue state concept. Before that, most states were swing states in a given election year for the presidential cycle. And even if you look at a state like Arkansas, again, that's where Bill Clinton came from. So again, historically a blue state really only became a red state within the last 10 years because of the Democrat prowess in the state legislature. So there's a lot of shifting dynamics that could still be in a shakeout. You're obviously seeing Florida go red and stay red, and you're seeing the whole Northeast just go blue and stay blue. Republicans used to get senators out of Pennsylvania, but that's not the case anymore.
They might
And
get one out of West Virginia because
well,
Manchin it did announce today, or at least I got a notification that he is not seeking reelection.
okay, if Manchin is not seeking reelection, you can count that one in the W's for the Republicans.
But I
They
think
won't
it's going to
put
be
nearly
Jim
as much money
or
into that.
it's going to be the governor. I think that's
Oh,
gonna,
but he sucks.
yeah.
He sucks. Jim Justice is his name.
Jim. I almost said Jim Jordan, but yeah, Jim Justice.
So there's been a lot going on with politics. We've talked a lot about the Mike Johnson on Evangelical Dark Web and evangelicaldarkweb.org. So going back to Thursday, and one of the key themes is that Republicans are consistently outspent by Democrats.
Yes.
And you saw that generally across the board. I don't know if I saw that for the Tate Reeves election, but
I believe Tate Reeves was like the one case where Republicans outspent.
I mean,
But
Republicans, and this is not new. Barack Obama outspent McCain and Romney. So the Democrats have had a financial advantage. Hillary Clinton outspent Trump. So Republicans have been at a financial disadvantage for 15 years. And that does not even include the press and the media treatment of Republicans. So people got to keep that in mind. And when we look at elections, some of it's money. You can buy votes. But what I'm seeing is that turnout sucked for the Republicans. Even in Kentucky, let's move on to Kentucky. Andy Bashir and what's the other guy's name?
Cameron.
David Cameron, right? He did not turn out his base enough. He got fewer votes than Matt Bevin did 4 years ago. And Matt Bevin was an incumbent governor, but he was also kind of unpopular. So that is something to keep in mind. But despite the fact that Matt Bevin was an unpopular sitting governor, still got over 700,000 votes, Cameron didn't cross that threshold. I think he barely got above 600,000 votes. So he did not turn out his base. Kentucky is a state that has huge margins for Republicans in presidential elections. Andy Beshear is a special case because if you think about it, he's the best candidate the governor that the Democrats can throw in a state like Kentucky. He's the son of a former governor. Kentucky's a state that does not elect a whole lot of Democrat politicians, and he's handicapped and hamstrung by supermajorities in the House and Senate in Kentucky. The Republicans have supermajorities there, and they can override a lot of his vetoes. So this is someone who is a special case. He might be more popular because of how powerless he actually is from his position. Do you think that factors in?
I mean, yeah, they were able to override him on a couple things.
So it's almost like a Republican success paradox
Well, it's
to
kind of
some
like
degree.
John Bell. What is it? Edwards down in Louisiana. Similar situation where the legislature is powerful and the governor isn't necessarily fighting them on a lot of even some of the pro-life stuff that they're trying to do. So he's able to basically have these good laws go into effect even if he's not for them. So it's not on
I think it's kind of
his
like Bill
record.
Clinton winning re-election with Newt Gingrich and the conservatives that took over Congress in the 90s. And that made the Democrats look better. I think Barack Obama was actually helped by the 2010 election, in which Republicans took over a lot of state governors' offices, and then they improved the economy in those states, which made the economy seem not as bad in 2012 when Obama ran for re-election. Also, doesn't help that Republicans ran one of the worst candidates they've ever run for president. Top three worst in Mitt Romney. McCain's also in the top three as well. So as far as worst candidates in 2012. So there's kind of like a success paradox angle to it. And I don't know if that's the case for the disappointing results in Virginia, that the momentum seems to have stalled there. But I think the other thing with Cameron is that he ran on a Trump hump, and that did not work. And when your messaging is, I'm endorsed by Trump, vote for me, that is a terrible message because people vote for candidates, not necessarily endorsements. Now, endorsements can get you a
But he
long way in
has
a small election,
but
but in
he
a
has
statewide
the
election, it won't.
but he has the one thing that the boomers love to vote for.
And what's that?
He's got the right shade of melanin.
And yet they didn't come out for him.
Like, but sure
So
enough, he would have
let's
used the card.
we're gonna move to Ohio next, but I'm gonna catch up on some of the chat questions. Outlaw ask, help me understand, how does the politics fit people's hope in Christ versus a politician? And I think this is the wrong categorization. This isn't something we look to for salvation. This is something we do because it's good works. Aligning the civil sphere with the law of God is what we should be working towards as believers. This is pretty much what Christians have always believed until, uh, we can get into a rabbit hole on the Anabaptist and the Montanist or Montanist. I don't know. And then pretty much a lot of this Anabaptist polity that morphed into what is now very prevalent in a lot of dispensational circles. So Christians otherwise have always believed that um, ordering politics, ordering the civil sphere to the law of God is good for society at large. And that is what we're doing. This is an outstretch of our good works, but politics is also a way in which we can advance the gospel to a people group. And that is historically proven to be one of the most effective ways in getting a nation to go from the pagan column to a more Christian column. So obviously, people have to accept Christ individually, and they're justified individually and not as a nation. But ordering the politics to the law of God goes a long way to getting more people to accept Christ on an individual basis. So I see this as the outworking of Christianity, not the inworking of ourselves. Uh, and I hope everyone sees this more as good works and not works to save uh, ourselves in a way. It's not something we put our hope in. It's something we do because we have a hope in Christ. And anything you wanted to add to that?
I mean, we're not here to slip any politicians if that's the concern.
Yeah, that is
We're
correct.
not here telling you Cheeto Jesus saves. Don't worry. Or even, Florida man, uh, Florida Gator man will do everything that you want. I mean, we're not here to tell you any of that.
So Paul asks, what do you think of the theory that the GOP has traded suburban women who reliably vote in off-year and midterm elections for working class voters who only show up for presidential election years? Actually, this is kind of where I wanted to go with the Ohio. So I hadn't read the full question yet, but that's actually where I want to go with this because Ohio was a turnout issue. And I got an article over at Evangelical Dark Web, which will probably be the best way to tackle this because it goes into, we get into some polling data specifically from the exit polls.
I mean,
So,
if you want to win on abortion, you can't necessarily rely on women, suburban women, to deliver that for you. And that's the problem, is that women love their abortion, especially minority women.
so
And
you can see the screen, right? Yep.
yes.
So question one ballot initiative in Ohio has enshrined abortion in the state's constitution. As a result, the result as of the publication was 55-5 to 44-5, and that went up to like 57, I want to say, percent of the vote. So that it was a 10-point victory for the abortionist. And these results coincide with the gloomy gubernatorial vote from Kentucky, where Republicans failed to flip a governor's seat that they honestly should have flipped. The results of the referendum will enshrine abortion in the state's constitution, despite the heartbeat law currently in effect. The result of the referendum threatens this progress. So, one thing about the referendum is, I do believe that the referendum explicitly talks about uh, it explicitly talks about the unborn. Like
Yeah, it
you can
actually
terminate.
uses the word unborn child.
Yes. So
It's
don't tell me these people don't know that they're advocating for murdering unborn children. These people who voted yes all knew exactly what they were voting for. It was even spelled out in the pro-life language, and it still failed. We still lost, and we can break down this loss for a second because there's an NBC News did an exit poll, and it's pretty fascinating. And I made the comment that the Brian Tome, or the Tome version of Christianity, is clearly having an impact in Ohio. And he is the pastor of Crossroads Church, is one of the top 10 largest megachurches in the United States. At least the last time I covered him or looked at the list, he was on the top 10. And I think he's in the Columbus area or the Akron area. So one of those areas, and it's clearly have an effect. He's kind of like their version of Andy Stanley. He's also bad on the gay issue. We did that video a long time ago. So, white, born again, or evangelical Christians. This was 30% of the electorate. They voted 76% pro life.
that's kind of expected, though. I mean, if you look at what they
One in
say,
four voted pro abortion.
yeah, but that would be expected because when they talk about the white evangelical voting bloc, it's generally something like 70 to 80% vote Republican. So, I mean, it kind of like similar to that Republican Trump voter, where 1 in 5 Republicans is basically just a Democrat with an R next to their name. So, I mean, it's not proportionately unexpected when you categorize the, like, if you compare election to election. Yeah, 1 in 4 white evangelicals, right, or evangelical voters is
It says
basically a
white.
turncoat. Oh, says white. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So yeah, 1 in 4 being a turncoat. Yeah, that's not unsurprising.
So 1 in 4 is a Russell Moore, David French, can't legislate morality. And this drives me nuts because the people at G3 spent a considerable amount of time attacking Christian nationalism when they should have been attacking those 1 in 4 people who don't believe we can legislate morality. Because it's not like those are black Protestants, or otherwise pro-abortion people. I don't believe Methodists are counted in a poll as evangelical Christian, and most of them wouldn't identify as born again anyway. This is basically your Pentecostals, your Baptist or Baptist-costal, Presbyterian, the based kind, not the PC USA kind, and your non-denominational Baptist-costals. So that's who's in that poll. That's who's saying yes. Now, 1 in 4 is pretty bad. But let's get to the good part. 30%. That's 30% of the electorate.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people saying that the church didn't turn out the voters. I don't want to just blanket blame the church, which I mean some people are.
Some people are into
And I'm
doing
not
that. I'm
saying
not
there
into doing that.
aren't bad churches because you just mentioned one particularly large bad church. But
Yeah, it's a multi-campus megachurch. But yeah, 30% is pretty good. Like, that's good turnout, percentage-wise. That's good turnout. So I wanted to highlight that. Could it have been higher? Absolutely. That could have been a higher turnout, but that was good turn. 30%. I don't know what the proportion of white evangelical born again Christians is in the state of Ohio, but 30% sounds about right. Or they overperformed. Maybe it's 25% and they got up to 30.
I mean, it's about 22.5% are voting in the right direction.
Of the total vote.
Yeah, so it's 1 in 5 voters. As far as the
So
76% goes, that's about 1 in 5.
okay, so additionally, Trump voters underperformed as the 2020 results are 43. So the results. Okay, let me restart. So Trump in 2020 got 53% of the vote in Ohio. That's Trump 2020. And in this election, the Trump vote from 2020 was only 43%. So 43% of this electorate voted for Trump in 2020. And before you say these are young voters who didn't vote for this is their first time voting, 4%. And other means that they voted third party. I assume it means they voted third party or didn't vote at the top of the ticket in 2020. Am I reading this poll wrong?
That sounds about right.
Biden performed exactly the same as he did. The Biden electorate and the Biden vote in 2020 is about the same. So what's the biggest takeaway here?
No, the Trump voters obviously
The
weren't.
Trump vote did not show up.
Yeah. And again, I got to
You're
throw some blame on Trump and, again, GOP establishment. And
let's save that for a second.
okay.
Because I do want to, I'm just getting the bad news. Let's give the good news. 81%. This is the only group to outperform white born again evangelical Christians. Was the Donald Trump voter. They just didn't show up. Like 10 points lower. Proportion of the electorate is 10 points lower. That's embarrassing. And we're trying to pretend like, oh, the state's just uniquely pro-abortion, which, hey, people are pretty pro-abortion these days. I don't want to sugarcoat that. But let's be real here. The pro-life lobby did not turn out the base. Now, so Republicans need to solve their turnout issues in Ohio and elsewhere. The proportion of Biden voters is the same as 2020, meaning the failure of Trump voters to come out in support of life is one of the driving factors behind this loss. Additionally, the failure to show up for the prior referendum, which would have increased the threshold for this referendum to pass, would have rendered tonight's results a win. So basically, they had a referendum a few weeks ago, if not a couple of months ago, in which the state determined what the threshold was for a referendum to be enshrined in the Constitution. It was going to move it to a supermajority. I believe it was going to be like 60% in the vote. They did not get 60% tonight. The referendum, had they won the preseason, so to speak, they would have won tonight. But instead, they did not get their act together between that election and this election. They did not turn out the Republican voters. It's the Republican or the Donald Trump voters specifically. They didn't turn out the Donald Trump voters, and it cost them bigly. So now let's break down why do you think that is?
No, I mean, this is where I'm just going to throw Trump under the bus, where you got to be showing up for your voters. I mean, like Donald Trump could have like done some rallies in Ohio, do ballot harvesting at your rallies. I don't know how legal that is, but if you can do it at a church, I'm sure you can find a way. But yeah, Trump should have been on the ground in Ohio fighting for these ballot measures. The GOP shouldn't be hosting a debate after an election cycle or after an actual election day. They should be willing to put it off a week so that they could focus their energies on the ballots that are supposed to be casted instead of presidential primary politics. So even doing the election, or the debate yesterday, is an absolute misuse of resources. And again, I mean, maybe DeSantis could have helped out in Virginia. I don't know. But the idea is that they can't, for someone like DeSantis or Trump, you should be going to these states because they are still swing states and trying to get the down ballot, I guess, advantage. I mean, again, meeting with the local activists. There's a lot of benefits to your campaign if you're on the ground doing work, especially if you're DeSantis trying to take out the king.
I'm going to push back. I actually agree with the decision to have the debate right after the election. You're trying to capture enthusiasm, so I think that's not a bad thing to do. It's kind of like having an anchor show. It's kind of like being the show that comes on after Sunday Night Football or something. You're going to get a ratings boost,
True, but from a resource standpoint.
But I do think there's some candidates that really should have done something in Ohio. Donald Trump is one of them. This is again, he's the de facto leader of the Republican Party, and he was missing in action on this fight. If not missing in action, he was opposing the existing Ohio heartbeat bill, which is now in danger as a result of this referendum result. So Ohio had a heartbeat bill. That's now going to be gone unless the judges, say, hey, we're not removing this law because it's just, or
Well,
the
there is
outcome of
there is
removing it is
actually
unjust.
there is actually another recourse. I mean, again, because Ohio has a majority threshold for an amendment, so all you have to do is just put it back
Yeah, I
on the
would just
ballot.
rerun the
But
amendment and have it
Jeff
during a presidential cycle.
Jeff Durbin did talk about how they're still going to introduce their equal protection law in the legislative session. So and they were dissuaded from getting that law was dissuaded from being acted on because that'll interrupt our efforts on this amendment fight. So basically, they, I guess, blocked the equal protection law. So if you get the equal protection law, you're in a much better place.
And that's what the pro-life movement should be arguing is equal protection under the law. And they're not arguing that premise because they want to treat women who murder their own children as victims. Even though they're the one with the gun, they're the one loading the gun, they're the one pointing it at their stomach, and they're the ones pulling the trigger. But no, there's someone doing it for them, even though that's not true majority of the time. Majority of abortions are self-medicated,
Or
so to
for
speak. I don't want to
28
say medicated, but they're
or
self-done.
or for $28 a month, you can save a life. Because if they see the ultrasound, they'll totally not say yes to the abortion. Which again,
I mean, I think a lot of the people who go for that are looking for an out because, again, taking a life isn't something that even sinners do lightly.
Well, you would
Unless you're
think.
like Hamas.
Well, you would think,
They
but
do it
I
kind of lightly,
mean,
but
but these people, I mean, again, they want I mean, the law says
Or Hillary
on
Clinton. She
like the
doesn't do
amendment that
as
they're
well.
voting on said unborn child. So again, I guess they do take it very lightly.
Maybe.
So
So I think Donald Trump should have done something because he's the de facto leader of the Republican Party and he's been missing in action. Vivek Ramaswamy's from Ohio, so he should have done something here too. This is his backyard. Uh, this is his state. Show some leadership
especially if he's, I mean,
in your
obviously,
own state.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get to him, but let's just be honest.
We're going to talk about him, and
If
he
he
needs to get his
has
household in order.
if he has any, I don't know, ambitions beyond a campaign
Being a
that's not
radio
going to go
host,
anywhere, yeah, then yeah, he should have been boots on the ground.
he's not. He's not really the boots on the ground type. I don't hear anything about Vivek rallies or campaign events
Yeah,
in the key swing states. I just hear him having media appearances, and he's an AstroTurf candidate. I'm just going to be real. Like, he's not grassroots, he's AstroTurf. And along those lines, he traded access to his presidential campaign. So here's the trade. Like, I don't know if you've seen the meme going around, the meme template of this is a trade offer. Uh, the person on the person on the platform gets a president, the appeal of a Vivek Ramaswamy interview, which is of value to their platform, right? I'm trying not to name names to use an example, but so they get an entertaining guest on a platform. They get to discuss presidential politics and all this other stuff. In exchange, Vivek Ramaswamy gives them access to his campaign and the credibility to entertain other politics and pretend that you're being fair in your analysis of the race without threatening your bottom line, aka Trump. So you're able to say, hey, I'm open to all these other candidates in the race, but you're only really open to the least threatening to Donald Trump candidate in the race. I mean least threatening because Vivek Ramaswamy is not threatening Trump at all. And he thinks like there's no reason why he's in the race other than the show. And we're going to get to that in this when we talk about the debate. So he should have done something in Ohio if he's serious about being a leader, a future leader in the Republican Party. That's his state. He should get his own household in order, to use a line of his that we're going to talk about later. So, boots on the ground. Again, the results in Ohio are disappointing. It's not something to completely doom over because we can just have some sort of technocratic amendment during a presidential election that will overturn that amendment. But we got to get our turnout up. And the MAGA voter needs to show up for elections. So going back to Paul's question, what do you think about the theory that the GOP has traded suburban women who reliably vote in off-year elections and midterm elections for working-class voters who only show up for presidential election years? And I think there's something to this. Because it used to be Republicans could win every election but a presidential cycle. And now are we really only able to compete in an election cycle nationwide? Or presidential election cycle? Is that really the only time we're able to compete? And to some degree, that's historically been the case for Republicans. You look at in the past, voter registration, number of House seats and stuff like that. The Republicans have always outpunched their weight class when it comes to presidential politics. That's kind of historically always been true in terms of how many states were really red states at a state level versus and the voter registration and all that. You know, Richard Nixon won a landslide margin because basically whoever was not a diehard Democrat voted for him. And that included a large coalition of independents. So I think the unique Trump voter is the least reliable voter in the Republican tent. That's my theory because they didn't show up on game day in 2022. You look at Pennsylvania, turnout was bad. I realized the candidates were not great there, but you look at, I want to say Wisconsin, but they did show up. Ron Johnson was able to win in Wisconsin. You look at Michigan, the Republican Party is in disarray there. I saw that someone in the chat was from Michigan. But so you probably know what I'm talking about. So Pennsylvania is a mess. Michigan's a mess. Ohio's, a rhino fest, but it's actually one of the more competent Republican parties in terms of moving the state to the red. But is there another explanation?
I mean, it must be noted that those suburban white women, like again, that's going to increasingly be made up of college educated women. So that's an increasingly liberal demographic. So I think we do need to at least understand that demographic, that in the trade off, is also less valuable than it was 10 years ago. That's a trending blue demographic, especially if they're unmarried. So just keep that in mind. That is also a shrinking pie.
So it's not necessarily a trade, is what you're saying. It's like the Republicans, the coalition has been redrawn, or like the battle lines, the voting lines have been redrawn. So the question is, where are the Republican votes? So to me, this vote in Ohio was the Republicans got outworked. And people are trying to, this is where the evangelical angle comes in. People are trying to hyper spiritualize the results of this election. No, the Republicans were outworked. They were outspent and outworked. This was a winnable fight. They didn't show up. And you got to put in the hustle in a campaign. The Republican Party is so without leadership. Donald Trump was nowhere in this fight, and he's also dissed heartbeat bills, which was the law that, if he was for heartbeat bills, he could have rallied the people in Ohio to have saved that heartbeat bill. But instead, he was nowhere on the fight. He was missing in action. And the Democrats took advantage of this leadership vacuum in the Republican Party, exploited it. To use a World War II analogy, imagine if the pro-life legislation, say the heartbeat bill, say the pro-life side was the Atlantic Wall on the beaches of Normandy. And the invasion's coming on D-Day. And Erwin Rommel takes an ill-advised vacation with the imminent invasion coming, and the Axis powers don't want to wake Hitler up. That is the type of leadership crisis that was exploited on Tuesday in Ohio. Thoughts on that analogy and breaking Godwin's law?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's no leadership. There's no message. There's also just the House divided, I think, is also one factor because you got
Ohio Right to Life.
Yeah, Ohio
firing a Christian for saying that Jews need the gospel.
Yeah, that was the moment I knew that they were going to lose. Let's just be honest. Like, they're not serious about the campaign that's coming up. You basically say that we're going to follow the money before we follow God, and not both are going to dry up. As far like, no, who would donate to Right to Life organizations, because they don't have a fundraising strategy except a 15-week ban, which is never going to pass Congress.
And it still allows 99% of abortions. Whose life are you saving with that? Not enough.
But no, we can compromise. We can find common ground with people.
You're not even doing an Oscar Schindler. I could have saved more. It's more like I hardly saved any.
I mean, no, you're more like Walter White trying to negotiate as Hank is going to get shot in the head. They're not going to negotiate. They've already made up their mind. So
yeah, and you're trying to do the not Hillary Clinton, wrong pro-abortion individual. You're trying to do the Nikki Haley triangulation on the issue. Let's see. Yellowmouth says, fun fact, abortion has been a go-to issue for the GOP to get votes for 50 years. Why would they fight against it now? They count it as a W.
Because they want to walk away from it. They've like there's always been like a libertarian esque higher like class in the
The Koch
hierarchy.
brothers
Yeah,
would be one example of that. The people of
the McCains, the Karl Roves, like those that era.
and there's still a lot of that left to go.
And a lot of people just say, "Hey, punt it off to the courts, so they don't have to legislate." So there's.
So I want to move next to the debate. I honestly thought that this debate was less interesting than the previous debates.
I mean, it was better formatted in every possible regard.
So here's the thing. I honestly wasn't sure that there was a decisive winner in the debate. Maybe I was distracted. Maybe just there wasn't that hot moment for me. And then I see on social media, wow, Ron DeSantis must have done way better than I thought he did.
I thought DeSantis was the clear professional in the room, and it's also
But
because
the
no,
only the only person I thought did bad in that debate, Nikki Haley. But we're gonna have some tweets to discuss about that one.
I mean yeah, I mean part of the problem is DeSantis is able to like be a head above the smoke in a sense. He's basically not eating anyone's dust. So because he's going in there ahead of the others, he can basically survive, and they're essentially everyone else is taking each other out, and they're just giving it to DeSantis.
All right, so let's. I wrote this article for this morning. So the third primary debate was hosted by NBC News, and their liberal host immediately set the tone that they were going to be more professional than the liberal moderators at Fox News and exceeded the low threshold. First sentence. So let's talk about how it was moderated. I thought, again, this was the best moderated debate so far. Clearly, they were a step above Fox News in terms of professionalism, in terms of serious questions, in terms of just moderating the candidates with each other. They used discretion when a candidate was named, so it wasn't an automatic. You get to respond when your name's mentioned.
Yeah, because that does turn into a lot of time wasted.
Exactly.
But the other
And
thing, let's just talk about the fact that they went an entire hour before the commercial break.
that was nice.
Like, so you're not actually having
Now, the first
the
hour kind
early,
of sucked.
yeah, but you're not having the flow interrupted, so you're actually at least able to get substance, even if the substance is kind of bad. At least that first half hour, it was basically all Judaism all the time, or all Israel all the time. But they actually were able to have a little bit more flow. They weren't losing control because someone's trying to get a word in before the bell, and
Yeah, they didn't even have a bell, I don't even think. So
I mean they
I
had
thought
some
they did a great
lights.
job. Uh, as far as a televised thing, and then Vivek wants to say that, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and Tucker Carlson should have been asking the debate questions. First of all, I don't think Joe Rogan's meant for debate questions. I think he would just be good for a long form interview. And second of all, Elon Musk, uh, not even a natural born citizen of the United States, in my opinion. So I don't know. Maybe I'm
I
just getting.
actually appreciate that. I mean,
I didn't
honestly,
like the fact
it's
that they had the British dude last week
I
who
like how
looked
it's
like it was
just
past his bedtime.
absolutely just disrespect the media off the bat, and yeah,
But he didn't answer
I
the
like it.
question that was
Yeah,
asked. And the reason why he didn't answer the question that was asked is because he's kind of running to be an entertainer. He's not really running against Trump. I don't know whether Vivek's strategy is to be Trump's successor in the race if Trump were to get convicted and not be able to run anymore. But I think Trump's strategy is to run from prison if it comes to that. So
yeah, but the same people that would disqualify Trump would not give it to Vivek.
I don't think there's a vote for Vivek to get in the
Yeah,
event of Trump's downfall.
yeah, but I'm just saying those
He,
delegates, the
let's say
delegates at a convention would
let's
not
say
give it to
Trump
Vivek.
has 45% of the vote because it's a 45th president, so I'm being arbitrary. Right now. If Trump is out of the vote, is out of the race, is no longer a consideration, that 45%, I think 5% of that's going to go to Vivek. And most of that's going to go to DeSantis. So I don't see him going anywhere or doing anything. I think this is just a vanity campaign for him, just like it was for Ben Carson, just like it was for Herman Cain, who got screwed, by the way, just like it was for a lot of people. So, but NBC News did a much better job than Fox News. I just wanted to highlight that. That's how bad Fox News is. Doug Burgum failed to qualify for the debate. So we didn't get that, Al Pacino looking man, who I think is good looking and has excellent physiognomy. But a lot of people really don't like his eyebrows.
Forgetting to say something.
What?
Forgetting to say something.
The next sentence?
No homo.
No homo. No homo. And then Mike Pence dropped out. And Asa Hutchinson and others did not qualify. So Mike Pence dropping out, I think, actually vastly improved the quality of the debate.
Well, yeah, I think having 5 people on the stage matters versus others that just don't belong there.
Is it sad that I think Doug Burgum is the third best candidate in this race? And it's just because he's an average Republican governor, which makes him automatically better than Nikki Haley, who was a terrible governor, or Chris Christie, who wasn't really good by, standards outside of New Jersey. So just some thoughts. And then, Mike Pence not being in the race, man, was that better. It was just so much better without Mike Pence in the race, in the debate stage.
But I wanted to thank you for the question and make a bad joke.
So I mean, we didn't get a Mike Pence sex joke moment, and I'm really thankful for that. And so is my wife. So anyway, the 5 candidates who opposed Donald Trump took the stage: Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, and Chris Christie. I think that was in poll order, is what I had that. I think that was also in. Now, what's interesting is Steve Deace gave his analysis, and he was at the event. He said he basically paired the candidates. He said that, during the breaks, Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy were getting along and chumming it up, is what he said. Nikki Haley and Chris Christie were buddies the whole time. And then Tim Scott was socially awkward and by himself.
I'd actually agree with that. And I kind of thought that myself watching it live, where DeSantis and Ramaswamy, like Vivek, aside from making the heels comment, which, Nikki Haley totally.
We're going to talk about that. I got that.
Apart from that, he didn't take any shots at DeSantis. And he was focusing all his energy on Haley throughout that debate. And obviously Chris Christie is a rhino. And so
and that Vivek Ramaswamy is a spoiler candidate. And that's, if you're a Southern Baptist, run a spoiler candidate in Indianapolis this year. You should have ran one last year, just because anyone can nominate anyone on the floor. And then you get to give a nominating speech, and then you can just trash the other guy in the race. It's dirty politics, but it is not sin. So game recognized game. And Vivek Ramaswamy is looking familiar in this instance. Now, I think Vivek Ramaswamy is a snake oil salesman, but he's at least you see that, hey, he's not running to be president. He is running to damage other campaigns. And he took aim at Nikki Haley, and I think he scored some hits. We're going to talk about that exchange in a second. Tim Scott and Chris Christie were there as well. I do have a lot to say about Chris Christie, so let's talk about Chris Christie's for a second. And I got this section of the article titled "Chris Christie for Jersey Mikes." And if you live in the East Coast, you probably have a Jersey Mike sub. I don't know if that's a nationwide franchise, but we have them here in Maryland. So I have to give credit where credit is due. When it comes to subs, there's no candidate I trust more than Chris Christie. Christie had a good moment in which he was asked about how the U.S. Navy should build to match China's now larger fleet. Now, I didn't know that China had a now larger navy than the United States, but I guess here we are. Christie's answer was to emphasize nuclear submarines. Now, this answer resonates with history as Americans pioneered subs against the British during the American Revolution. The Kriegsmarine developed an extensive U-boat program to counteract the supremacy of the Royal Navy. The Imperial Japanese Navy also had an extensive submarine program, but their war doctrine handcuffed their potential to interrupt merchant trade. With unmanned boats, aerial drones, and satellite reconnaissance, going deeper into the oceans is the historically most precedented way to counteract a naval disadvantage. If anything, Christie undersold his answer, but I thought that was a brilliant answer by Christie and his best moment of the campaign so far. I don't think he's had any good moments. Actually, maybe when he was beefing with Vivek Ramaswamy, that was a kind of good moment for him. I don't like Chris Christie at all, but that was a very good answer to an important question. So I wanted to give credit to that. It's not like his campaign's going anywhere, but your thoughts on that answer?
I mean, I guess. I mean, I guess there is. I mean, I'm not necessarily qualified to say this, but what is I guess, the quality of naval ships in modern warfare? Kind of like how tanks aren't necessarily proving to be the most effective in Ukraine. Is that going to be the same case with the destroyer? I mean, obviously, an aircraft carrier is still an aircraft carrier. So
Well,
and
China
this
having a
comment might
larger
be.
Navy in the U.S. is not a problem, and I think it is a problem because the U.S. Navy is spread out across the globe. We have different fleets named after, a Mediterranean fleet, an East Asian fleet, uh, Persian Gulf area fleet, and Atlantic, Pacific, and all that. So because China's fleet is larger, and I presume that China's fleets are not as scattered across the earth, I think because of that, there's a tactic or a strategy in warfare called defeat in detail, in which you are a smaller force overall, but you focus all your energy on taking out, one of the
Well, I think
deployments of
China.
your soldiers. It
But I
was
think
used,
China is trying to get its
but
access into
China's
the
a
Atlantic,
larger,
so
but
they want Atlantic access
but
as
in
well.
terms of the Pacific, if China's the larger naval presence in the Pacific, that's a problem for the United States.
I
I
mean,
just
but
don't.
again, I am willing to at least entertain the question of whether destroyers are the way to go with regards to naval
And I
warfare, and
think
not just.
submarines might actually be. I think Chris
Yeah,
Christie undersold the case on submarines being the solution to this problem. Submarines, I mean, destroyers, I guess, would be just escorts for the aircraft carriers. I guess you know because aircraft carriers are the supreme, and I don't know. You kind of look at naval battles from World War II, and it's like, wow, America really got lucky against the Japanese Navy.
some people say luck, some people say other things, but yeah,
What would be other
if
things?
they think it, depending on their theory about Pearl Harbor, but yes.
No, no, no. Look at Midway. Like that was partially luck, and and that was a carrier battle, but that was luck. You look at the Guadalcanal campaign. The U.S. suffered defeat there, and there was a Pyrrhic victory by the Japanese during that time in World War II as well. America's Navy got lucky at times in World War II, and then you know there's also a lot of unlucky instances like the USS Indianapolis, which I believe was the ship that was carrying the nuclear bomb. But because it was doing that, it went radio silent on its way back, or its way after it completed that mission. It maintained radio silence and got bombed by the Japanese. And
And
that's the
that's
story. That's the story where the
JFK.
sharks are circling
Well,
the
isn't
survivors.
isn't that also JFK's one of his stories as well?
I don't know about that connection, but America, yeah, we part a lot of it came down to luck in World War II in the Pacific theater. Uh, And with that said, we if we're already overextended around the world, and then China's not overextended but has a large presence in the Pacific, that's going to spell doom. We're going to be at a disadvantage. So I think Chris Christie's answer on that undersold it. And now Yellowmoth says the U.S. was always going to beat the Japanese, and the Japanese knew it. Our production was much greater than theirs. That is to some degree true, but the Japanese, their war doctrine, I referenced the Japanese war doctrine earlier. So the Japanese did not believe in attacking merchant vessels. They didn't really do that a whole lot. America was all about attacking the merchant vessels, and so were the Germans in World War II as well. But the Japanese, they wanted to create a scenario that was going to be a decisive battle. And that's what they wanted with Midway. The problem is the Japanese overextended their forces in Midway because they were attacking the Aleutian Islands. They were invading the Aleutian Islands during that time. So those reinforcements were too far away to reinforce Midway, and they suffered a disastrous defeat at Midway. So they could potentially have won because, like, Coral Sea, I believe, was a pretty bad loss for them, and then Midway. But theoretically, their Navy almost won. So so Japan was gearing up for a short war. They didn't think America could withstand a long war or had the stomach for a long war. And they wanted to and their war doctrine was about creating a decisive battle and winning that battle, and believing that after they wanted the decisive battle that they set up, then they would negotiate peace. And yeah, Yellowmoth mentions that we cracked their code and knew when and where Midway was going to happen. But again, not the easiest battle. Like, you can crack their code, their playbook, but you still got to win the battle, and that was pretty hard at Midway. But it was done. But yeah, I think submarines was actually a very good answer. Next subject I want to talk about is Tim Scott's girlfriend was cited. So Tim Scott gave perhaps his best performance yet, and I know that that's a low bar. Schooling NBC on the fact that oil is a speculative market. That was the most intelligent. I think he sounded the entire campaign. He managed not to sound as cringy as Mike Pence does when incorporating scripture. It comes across as pandering to evangelicals. Most memorable, however, was his girlfriend made an appearance after the debate.
Okay, I didn't see that thing.
Her name is Mindy. So, well, and she's white.
And that's just the background shot, right? That's not even like them actually.
There's video.
Yeah, no, but
do it in a way where they basically.
So they're just they're in the background of a video.
I mean, let's be honest. Tim Scott still sounded pretty dumb.
You see the handhold. They just don't want to.
I mean, maybe her being there
might have been
he
some
performed
chemistry.
marginally better than he did on prior nights.
So Vivek versus Haley. I do believe I have a thing for this.
But I mean, Tim Scott was just bad the entire night, except for maybe the oil market thing. But other than that, I mean,
that was still his best performance or his best moment. Am I wrong? Or am I like, am I like that low on Tim Scott?
Okay, I mean, you're fishing for good things to say about him, so I understand.
I'm trying to be positive because I'm trying to be positive about this. Okay, so Nikki Haley to Vivek, you're just scum.
Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it, and that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy answer is
your thoughts on that exchange?
I mean, I don't mind the low blow. I mean, obviously, like a lot of older people and non-internet enthusiasts don't like that kind of retail politics. But at the end of the day, I mean, Vivek actually has a valid point. You're gonna talk about TikTok bad, but you're gonna your daughter's on. I don't know how old the daughter is, but and
Uh,
then
I actually thought that low blow was fine.
I mean, I
I
don't.
thought that was clean. I thought that was as a Christian, I thought that was fair game. I mean, you don't have your own household in order. That's fair game to me. That's a fair critique. Not a popular critique, and that's why it was probably unwise for Vivek to have said that.
Yeah, let someone else say that for you instead
I
of.
mean, the psychopathic business strategy is to not be the bearer of bad news.
Like, you got to find some shill on the internet that's gonna drop that one for you.
All right, keep my wife's name out your mouth, Nikki Haley, except her daughter. But yes, her daughter is an adult, is
Okay.
something that's worth pointing out. But I thought that was fine. I thought that was clean. For her to say you're just scum, whatever.
I mean, that's
But
reflecting
that
what the
was
crowds
entertainment, I
think.
guess.
But that's what the crowd thought of Vivek, though. So I don't know. I mean, again, that wasn't even the best. I mean, I think DeSantis got the best slap on Haley, but obviously, Vivek was working some inside jabs on her the entire night.
I mean, there was a lot of that. They don't like each other, and it's not just it, and it is beyond just the performance.
Well,
Like I
they've
think
been going at it since the first debate, so it is routine. They are taking jabs at each other.
so. All right, so that exchange I thought was bad for Vivek. So one thing that I've heard is that Vivek never recovered from that moment. Like I don't think he really had a moment after that happened. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I mean, my perception of Vivek is that he's the guy that's going to just start lobbing grenades, but it does have a blowback effect on himself. And again, I mean, Vivek is someone that knows how to talk dirty. He knows how to say the right things and really rev up the bass. But at the end of the day, he comes across as kind of a prostitute. He knows how to talk dirty. He knows how to get rouse the senses. But at the end, it's not real, or you don't think it's real. So I mean, that's Vivek as a candidate.
Okay, so let's talk about high heels. Vivek, I wear high heels. They're not for a fashion statement, they're for ammunition. And what ammunition? What is she loading her high heels into? And to me, it just says whore.
I mean,
That's
to
the
me, it's
first thought that
just.
comes to my mind. Like, oh, you're dressed like that, or type of reaction.
I mean, to me, it just says you're playing the vagina card as a candidate, and that was just one of several moments. I mean, obviously, Vivek was lobbing grenades, so. But yeah, you basically have been playing the same card you've been playing this entire campaign. It's just tout the fact that you're a woman, you're in heels. What, 5-inch, not 3-inch heels? Like, didn't she even?
They're bigger.
Yeah, they're bigger than what he was saying.
I didn't get that comment, and neither did the internet. So this is she tweeted that statement thinking it was a money line, and I don't know what boomer thinks it's a money line, but it didn't play well on Twitter. This tweet got heavily ratioed, 11 million views. So it's not like it didn't go viral. 11 million views, 6.9 thousand likes, 1,500 response. Absolute ratio
I like the pig.
incoming.
I don't even know what that's.
So she got heavily ratioed for this. Did not go over well. So you didn't understand the statement, right?
I mean,
I don't.
I don't
Did
know. It
anyone?
was obviously off the cuff, and I understand it's not the best. It's not like it's going to be a money shot because you weren't expecting the heels comment. So you're kind of improving your response and just, I don't know, just say ammunition. I'm owning it. But I don't know. If it wasn't her playing, I mean, if it was an actual candidate that you kind of liked and wasn't just playing the woman card, you might be okay with it. Like if Trump had said it's for ammunition, then I don't think anyone would really think twice about it, but I don't know. It's not a make or break as far as like.
I think this is actually a pretty good comment on it. Nikki Haley is like your embarrassing mom who thinks she's 25 when she's actually 58.
I'll say she looks younger than
She
that.
might
So.
actually be 58 years old, right?
Yeah, she looks younger than that, so props to her. Something going for her.
Oh, here's what my wife said. She was wearing the wrong color blush. Her makeup, I guess, was not on fleek last night.
Maybe it's because of the lights, and you have to also
Nah,
do.
so smash the like button if you're in the chat. Appreciate it with the YouTube algorithms on a competitive night like this, because everyone wants to do live streams during our blog. I'm just kidding, but so with that said, this tweet. So the Nikki Haley abortion stuff. I don't know why she does the best at making a pro-abortion argument to Republicans. Is there anyone better at that?
I mean, she's basically just doing. I'm not personally pro, or I'm personally pro-life, but she's basically doing what Democrats have always done. I'm personally pro-life, but I don't
I'm
think
going to
we
vote
should.
for
I don't think
everything.
we should really pursue this. So she's trying to take like a pragmatic, just weasel around the bush, I guess, kind of commentary. So, I mean, she did the exact same thing in the last debate, so nothing is necessarily new because they asked the abortion question then as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the exact same thing, but that was her biggest applause line.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just who gets access to us, who's taking a seat at a NBC ran debate that's funded by Rona McDaniel.
Yeah, so I didn't think that. I don't know why that resonates with people. Because I
Maybe
guess
it's
they're not
because
parsing what she's saying. Oh, I don't want to judge you for being pro-life. Well, I do. Or sorry, pro-abortion. Like if you support if you're pro-choice, I won't judge you. Well, you won't, but I will. Because the Bible says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. And the Bible, you will be judged for tolerating evil and calling evil good.
but
Romans 1.
if she
That's
can't
how it ends.
if she can't like reach some kind of common ground, then how can she motivate a country to fight some war somewhere overseas?
There's not going to be common ground on abortion. It's one of those issues that there is no common ground on. So she doesn't understand politics, apparently, despite operating in politics at a very high level. Or, and this is probably the truth, she's just lying about it. She's lying to you. And Vivek called her out for that. And I thought he did. Again, Vivek on Haley, I thought was good.
Yeah, he was good at lobbing some grenades. It's just,
That's what he's there for, the show. And sometimes you want someone else to be the bearer of bad news.
And that's why it helps out DeSantis.
It helps out DeSantis the most, I think. Yeah. Now, DeSantis and Haley did trade barbs. We are going to talk about those exchanges. Anything else you wanted to say about Haley's performance?
I mean, obviously she took punches.
I don't know.
And she didn't come out untouched, unscathed. I mean,
So,
obviously the crowd didn't.
I was trying to look for the Ben Shapiro's tweet that was going to tell us that Nikki Haley did good, because that was apparently true last time. But
Nikki
Matt
Haley
Walsh was going hard on her. So
I mean, Nikki Haley's done well in that she's solidified the Rhino camp quite.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Like in that respect, she's done well, but that's also just because Christie is a slob and Tim Scott is pretty stupid. So
Tim Scott's not going to get the Rhino vote.
Yeah, but
quoting the Bible that much.
I mean, he just comes across as very unintelligent, so he can't necessarily try. Like he doesn't have the aptitude to succeed when you're arguing about drapes and curtains.
No, because he has his girlfriend that's going to decide that for him.
Hey, him finding a girlfriend in between debates did help out his performance.
And she's white. Why am I not surprised by that? I don't know. So Are you serious? Same Reza says Ben Shapiro called Nikki Haley his spirit animal.
Is that recent or is that like years ago? And
that is so gay because again, Nikki Haley was not a good governor of South Carolina, and then she took the easiest job in the Trump administration. He's saying that because of how pro-Israel she is. Let's just be real. I thought she did the worst in the debate. I don't think anyone really did that bad, and that's judging who they're running for, like their base. Are they gonna grow or decrease? I don't think Nikki Haley is that formidable of a candidate because she has no accomplishments. So those are just my thoughts. So let's talk. Let's talk about the land in China, Barb, because let's talk about the Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis. So this is the exchange on the China thing.
We have to have the ability to back up a strategy of denial of President Xi's ambitions. And if China is able to be the world's leading superpower, that will affect you and your family in ways that are going to be very bad. They will export authoritarianism all around the world as the cost of doing business. They will impose things like social credit scores and internet monitoring. So this is, to this generation, what the Soviet Union was to the post-World War II generation. I've already released a plan. We're going to get to 355 ships at the end of the first term, 385 ships at the end of the second term, but we're going to have a path to 600 ships over the next 20 years. I think the future of freedom is going to be determined in the Indo-Pacific. We have a strategy not just military, but decoupling from the economy and fighting them here at home with their cultural. You know, Ambassador Haley said somehow I wasn't doing. She welcomed them into South Carolina, gave them land near a military base, wrote the Chinese ambassador a love letter saying what a great friend they were. That was like their #1 way to do economic development. In Florida, I banned China from buying land in this state, and we kicked out on our universities, and we kicked the Confucius Institutes out of our universities. We've recognized the threat, and we've acted swiftly and decisively.
So that was Ron DeSantis attacking Nikki Haley. There is a part to that.
That was the best part because that first like 30 seconds was not a good answer. Like honestly, talking about how the Chinese are exporting to authoritarianism to the rest of the world, like really, we don't have big tech censorship and cancel culture over here. Like we're not implementing our own credit system over here, just rebranded. So, and then everything after, we're going to get to 385 ships and then 600 ships over 20 years. Everything after that was very well done. And him just absolutely pimp slapping Nikki Haley and her salty face. Like
you love to see that.
She was sour immediately at the shot that was fired.
Yes. I want to see. I'm going to try to find the follow-up clip to that.
And that's what Ron DeSantis needs to deliver when you talk about DeSantis not delivering the show and, you know, connecting with politicians on like that just want a little bit more sizzle. And that was a good moment there because he just absolutely delivers it.
Right. So we got, I'm trying to find more of that other clip. Okay. This is the clip I found that I wanted to show. It was actually the clip that I thought I was showing, but nonetheless, it is quieter than the last clip, and I apologize for that.
Company 10 years ago to South Carolina. But Ron, you are the chair of your economic development agency that as of last week said Florida is the ideal place for Chinese businesses. Not only that, you have a company that is manufacturer of Chinese military planes. You have it. They are expanding 2 training sites at 2 of your airports now, one which is 12 miles away from a naval base. Then you have another company that's expanding, and they were just invaded by the Department of Homeland Security. So mine was 10 years ago.
You gave
Yours
them
was
stuff.
6
I
months
didn't
ago.
give them anything.
What's your story?
And I abolished that agency that she's talking about.
No,
Enterprise Florida, we abolished it, and of course we banned China from buying land.
The website
Not
last
exactly
week.
a
Go
great
check.
recruiting pitch if you're banning them from purchasing land.
You scrubbed the website
so we've
last
stood up
week.
and we've done the right thing.
So I thought I'm sorry that the audio wasn't good, but that was the exchange where Nikki Haley goes after Ron DeSantis's government agency that said this was the number one place for China, that China wanted to open up business. Ron DeSantis says, I abolished that agency. And let me just break that first part down. So the idea that this is the number one place that China would want to open up doesn't mean that they're necessarily inviting China there. I mean, the number one place you would want to nuke would be a nation's capital, right? So I don't quite get, like, she's making a logical leap that is assumed. There's an intention that's assumed in what she was saying. And then she tries to say that you scrubbed the website last week, as though a now defunct agency would have its website wiped immediately. I think that's a logical assumption
I
on
mean,
how government works. It's not realistic.
I mean, if you live outside of Florida, I think a lot of this might just be confusing because I don't know anything about this agency. I don't know anything about anything that she's talking about. So it does seem very weird.
And then for DeSantis to say,
And
I abolish that agency, kind of just ends it in most people's minds.
yes. And again, how many people are actually going to dig deeper and determine whether DeSantis is lying or telling the truth or what the timeline of events even is? I don't know. I didn't have time to do that today.
I mean, I've seen the fact checks come in from these debates, and Nikki Haley was called out for lying in the last debate about her ties with China, which I believe Vivek referenced in last night's debate. So, I mean, it didn't. I don't think that went well for her. That exchange, Ron DeSantis attacked Nikki Haley. She responded and fell flat, and it was a knockout. Um, you score that round 10-8 DeSantis. If this were boxing, and just to kind of catch up on some chat, China doesn't export their ideology on the world stage. They could care less what you do in your country. They just want money from you. Basically, the comparison is China is Mr. Krabs' country that cares about money and just about nothing else. Are you sure you're not confusing that with a different country? Um, I don't. I, I do see China as radical materialist.
I mean, there is a
If you're
mercantilistic aspect to it, but they're willing to essentially come bearing gifts in return for access to materials like mines and resources. So there is I mean, they're traditional old school mercantilism. We would be better if our foreign policy was like China's.
no doubt. No doubt. Instead of neocons,
I mean, they want to
regime building.
They want to build things for African nations. All we want to do is drug them.
Yeah, apparently, if Mr. Beast can just build 100 wells that apparently they can't do themselves, he makes it look easy. So I'm gonna bookmark this and play the audio from my phone because that is too quiet. So let me pull that up.
Comes to the environment. You all liberal when it comes to the environment. You always have been. Just own it if that's the case. But don't keep saying you're something that you're not.
Let me respond to that. Our whole energy plan, you can't get the shale without fracking. We are absolutely going to frack, but I disagree with Nikki Haley. I don't think it's a good idea to drill in the Florida Everglades, and I know most Floridians agree with me.
You banned fracking. Thank you very much, Lester.
So your thoughts on that exchange? Nikki Haley tried to go after Ron DeSantis for being liberal on energy.
I mean, DeSantis is actually good on the environment without necessarily being a sellout to corporate interest. I mean, he took on
environmentalist interest.
He took on Big Cane in Florida. He obviously, you're trying to talk about fracking in the Everglades in Florida in DeSantis's hometown. This isn't Pennsylvania or Ohio where that talking point might work a lot better. This is Florida. You're in his home court. And
yeah, in the article I wrote, she tried to pull this off in Florida. And basically the meme that emerged from this moment was frack them glades. because she's really attacking Ron DeSantis for not fracking in the Florida Everglades. That was a moronic attack line by Nikki Haley because she did not understand the issue, because she doesn't understand what
Well,
life is like outside of the DC bubble is kind of my
that's
surmise.
her doing the Chamber of Commerce talking point while at the same time she wants to do the I'm the fiscal conservative that's going to balance the budget like
How
shtick.
many people associate Florida with, natural gas resources? Like 0 people,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
You said
you think Florida oil, you think Florida like
Gulf
in the
Coast,
Gulf.
or yeah. And you're talking about drilling into a swamp. I'm under the impression that that is not the most economically viable place to start fracking anyway.
What about those hurricanes that come in?
So
Probably not
there's
a
a
good
lot that
idea.
could go wrong in that area. I think Ron DeSantis has the high ground there, and electorally speaking, that was like
Yeah,
that.
well,
That is a, a self-inflicted gun wound to Nikki Haley's electoral prospects, because if she is the nominee in a hypothetical world, they're going to say she wants to frack the Everglades and basically get, that's not, that's going to kill her with younger people.
yeah, just have
And we're
an alligator stuck in tar as like
some,
the like a
the
or
water, the swamp on fire, and the alligator.
the manatee
Yeah,
or the
something
sea
like that.
lion. Like,
It's not going to go over well. Like, you can't. But DeSantis, as far as Republicans are concerned, without, he doesn't bend over to the climate change agenda, from what I can tell, and he actually triangulates on the environment very well because he makes it a local issue, and that's what we should be doing. So, I think, environmental conservation is good, but environmentalism is sinful, and that's because environmentalism gets the entire creation order backwards, because creation was for mankind, not mankind for creation. Like, we're to steward it, we're to have dominion over creation. We are not to exist for creation. Creation is to exist for us. So, that's you're going against creation. So,
yeah,
and same Reza points out, um, American oil in general is not profitable to drill unless oil prices are high, and we aren't actually energy independent, or aren't actually energy dependent. We're only in the area, in a sense, if we okay. So basically what you're saying is, if it's economically viable, we
yes, I
are
mean
environmentally independent.
America has a higher cost per barrel for production than probably most of the world, and I don't know why. Again, fracking shale and stuff like that is more expensive to frack than like the Saudis, who can pretty much outproduce and do it at the lowest possible cost. Because I think they're like
But
under.
fracking is better technology in the long
Yeah,
run. So
I mean, if you can produce oil under $10 a barrel and sell it for $80 a barrel, you're clearing some cash, and
it's
that's
not it's not like he's the governor of Wyoming who's investing in wind energy, and now they're paying like over 30% more
or
electric rates in Wyoming,
Hawaii
which
and
is more or
not
less an oil state as
Hawaii
well.
and not getting those power lines fixed.
So, yeah, I thought that was like Wile E. Coyote just, running into a wall there. Like, that was such a bad attack by Nikki Haley.
But that's the Chamber of Commerce coming out.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It doesn't play well on TV. That's why nobody likes those people, yet there's so many Republicans that vote for that. I don't get it. They're every stereotype that the Democrats ran on. Like, the Democrats think that um, the Republicans are the party of the rich. That's not true, because the Democrats have a funding advantage in most elections, most competitive elections for sure.
Well, and another issue where you saw it is the Social Security issue, where they were asked the question about the solvency of a program that's tied to a $30 trillion bag. But yeah, do you want to raise the retirement age? And Christie and Haley were both basically saying yes. to raising the retirement age, that's going to turn out some young voters for you. Hey, you got to work more to pay off the boomers' retirement fund.
Yeah, I thought DeSantis
So
pointing out that the life expectancy is decreasing is not as a reason to not raise the age of Social Security was a good answer. And Trump's been attacking him from the left on the issue of Social Security and entitlements, which again, I'm in my 20s. I don't care about Social Security. I don't want to pay Social Security. I don't want to receive Social Security when I'm old. I don't want to pay into it when I'm young. So that's kind of my mentality. Like I'd much rather have that money right now, and I can steward the money myself, and not be irresponsible with it. Those are my thoughts.
yeah,
That I could do better with that money than the government can, and get a higher return than what Social Security would give me. And then the fact that it is good that they point out that rich people shouldn't get Social Security checks, but they also shouldn't be paying into it either. And I know that they're capped at 114,000. I want to say is the threshold. Like you get Social Security tax on the first $114,000 that you make.
it might change, but yeah.
So, and I think a lot of Social Security is tied into how much you pay into it, but I'm not entirely sure how it works because I'm not old. So, we do have two polls, not just one, but two polls that came out on the debate. And according to the 538 Washington Post Ipsos poll, who do you think performed the best? Haley got 34%, DeSantis got 23%, Ramaswamy got 14%, and Chris Christie got 8%. So clearly, Tim Scott left in the dust there. No one thought he did the best, I guess. I don't know what those numbers add up to, but not quite 100%. Performed the worst. Ramaswamy, 29%. Chris Christie, 24%. So Tim Scott, nowhere to be found on best or worst. Just absolutely forgettable.
Yeah, I feel like
your thoughts on this poll?
I don't know. I feel like it's propaganda.
I really hope this poll is wrong. And
I
fake
don't
news.
see how you come away thinking Nikki Haley did the best.
I thought she was the only candidate that did particularly bad.
So I'm guessing that's either propaganda or Nikki Haley, basically got a bot army to do it.
Now it's a Washington Post push poll. So I don't get it. Considering voting for pre versus after the debate, Nikki Haley got +8, DeSantis got +2. So Nikki Haley went from 45% considering her to 53% considering her. DeSantis went from 54% to 56%. I think that number is low for DeSantis. Ramaswamy went from 27 to 27. No
Yeah,
change.
like what percent of people that are actually watching that debate would not consider Ron DeSantis? Consider, not even like his number one. Like, would a Ramaswamy supporter not vote DeSantis under any circumstance? Would a Tim Scott's voter be that averse to
Yeah,
DeSantis?
who in that room is not winnable for DeSantis? The ultra liberals?
Well, yeah, that would be the Haley
Is this
supporters.
literally just the 50% are the 56% and the 53%? Is that literally just the 6% overlap between DeSantis and Haley supporters?
I mean, again, it goes back to the fact that 20% of Republicans are pretty much the people that are backstabbers and Nikki Haley types.
Tim Scott increased his consideration by 2 points from 25 to 27%. Chris Christie increased his consideration percentage from 19 to 25%. So he's in last place according to that. Favorability ratings. Nikki Haley's favorability is now tied, according to this poll, with Ron DeSantis's favorability.
Yeah, I don't
at
understand.
65%.
I don't understand who likes Ron DeSantis that would like Nikki Haley.
That voter's out there. I see it on social media all the time. There's a lot of liberal DeSantis supporters. But at the same time, Nikki Haley's not likable. I don't get it.
And I don't understand how Chris Christie the most seemingly one of the more improved candidates on the stage.
Yeah, okay, we'll get to that in a second. Scott, favorability increase from 46% to 57%. Do you buy or sell that?
I mean, I would
Are
sell
you
this
buying
entire.
that?
I sell this entire poll.
I don't think his favorability increased 11% or based on that performance that he gave at all. Now it increased a little bit because we finally saw his girlfriend, but I don't think, he's not a serious senator. Ramaswamy increases favorability 1 point from 43% to 44%. Now I think that's the most accurate number.
I mean, so everyone improved.
Apparently.
Yeah. Everyone's a winner.
Chris Christie went up 15 points from 28% favorability to 43% favorability. What? No way. No way. I don't buy that for a second. Any more thoughts before we jettison this poll?
Yeah, I mean, these are the bad polls, which
this is the same poll we used for the last two debates, but I don't know what reality this poll is in, what sample that what is the population that they're sampling, because this population is not the Republican electorate that voted 70% disestablishment in 2016. 70% of the Republican electorate in 2016 voted for an anti-establishment candidate.
I mean, unless like the only issue that this sample cares about is the foreign policy stuff, and they like their warmongering, and they want someone that's going to be super tight with Bibi.
I mean, 20 minutes were spent on Israel.
Yeah, I mean, if that's
what a waste of time.
If that is the sample and that's their number one issue, maybe that's the explanation, because a lot of the candidates were kind of speaking very similarly to each other at that point.
Okay, so we have a Daily Mail poll. So Daily Mail poll, here we go. Which word best sums up the performance of each candidate? Funniest. Vivek Ramaswamy wins that with 19%. So that's a plurality, but better than... I guess he wins because a lot of people say they don't know, because that's under 1 in 5, technically speaking. And there are 5 people on the stage. Most persuasive, Vivek won that with 28%. Most presidential, Ron DeSantis wins that with 30. Strongest, Ron DeSantis again with 32%. Most charming is DeSantis at 24%. Most well-spoken is Vivek Ramaswamy at 28%. He is a very well-spoken person.
I'm not sure I'd say that would be reflective of his performance last night. I mean, you're getting funniest and most well-spoken.
Most competent, Ron DeSantis at 33%. That's 1 in 3. And most boring, Chris Christie, 25%. I kind of would have given that to Tim Scott, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we already talked about Chris Christie and submarines. I thought that was the one time I've actually considered him to make a compelling point, and he undersold the point. Most annoying, Chris Christie at 27%. Most I mean, I would have thought Vivek would have gotten that, but that just shows you how unfavorable Chris Christie is. Most aggressive, 25% for Vivek Ramaswamy.
That's low.
That is low. Weakest, 29% for Chris Christie. Most untrustworthy, 28% for Chris Christie. I think Nikki Haley should get that one, in my opinion.
I can understand. Chris
Christie,
why.
You understand what he's going to do. You understand that Chris Christie is going to screw you.
But Tim Scott should get weak.
He's not going to pretend otherwise. Nikki Haley says, I'm the conservative, I'm pro-life, and then she's going to screw you. Like, most smarmy. Vivek at 17%, and that percent he wins with 17%, which is less than 1 in 5 because most people don't know that word. Any dispute of that one? That claim that most people don't know what the word smarmy means?
No, that's how math works, unless there's like 8 candidates in this poll.
There's only 5 though.
Yeah.
So if anything's below 1 in 5, it's people don't understand what the word means, or how to use it in this context. Most pompous, Chris Christie at 30%, and that's a male characteristic, I would imagine. So Nikki Haley doesn't win that even. Most patronizing is Chris Christie at 21%, barely above 1 in 5. Strongest on Israel, Ron DeSantis at 24%. So let's talk about the Israel thing for a second. Ron DeSantis, his weakness electorally is with the boomers, the boomer cons. So I think that's why Ron DeSantis plays up the Israel thing, because he wants to win the boomers. He wants to close the deal with the boomers who love themselves some Israel.
Yeah, I mean, getting the Republican Party off of that, I guess.
That's an uphill battle.
Dumping that girlfriend is harder than like Tiger Woods. Like we'd have to go to Tiger Woods. Hey, how do you dump this girl? Because it's harder than what he has to deal with. If she won't move out, like how do you dump this issue? Aside from just waiting out the generational change, because the Gen Z conservatives are not going to care nearly as much. And obviously, the Democrats are creating their own golem, so to speak, on the issue, which is kind of hilarious. But the older generations are gung ho, and but DeSantis is a little bit above and beyond when it comes to the Israel question.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you go to Israel to sign legislation, obviously praying at the wall, which is, Second Commandment violation, which you touched on this morning, and is the reform.
Right, but I think he did it unwittingly, and so does Donald Trump and even Mike Pence.
I mean, he's Catholic. He's Catholic, so he can do the whole "we pray to relics" thing.
I guess you're right. So we got another thing to show you, and this is from, again, the same Daily Mail poll, which I think is a better poll, not just because it agrees with my assessment of the debate, but candidate debate performances. Now, I think these grades are low across the board, but it has DeSantis as the winner according to this poll. So this is based on a 1 to 10 scale. I don't think DeSantis did a D+. I don't think he gave a D+ performance. I don't.
Yeah, he should be at least like.
I'm not sure. Again, only Nikki Haley gave that low of a performance, in my opinion. Because again, I thought when Vivek Ramaswamy mentioned Nikki Haley's daughter, that was fine. If it's okay to bring up Hunter Biden, it's certainly okay to bring that up. My opinion. We've already made the adult children of politicians fair game in our country. I don't see the
I mean, I didn't even realize that it was an adult child when he brought it up. Not that it would have changed my opinion. I mean, it does seem a little low ball for especially at least the top 3. I mean, Tim Scott being a 50, 55 or 5.5.
I mean, I think these grades skew low.
Yeah.
But it's better than nothing, right? I think this is a better metric than who won the debate. You get a bunch of people to grade it, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, DeSantis polling 0.5% or half a grade or
half a letter grade higher, yeah,
is, I think, significant in that because the range is 6.6 to 4.8. So he is a good chunk of that range in the lead.
So let me see if I can find. Okay, so this is a little bit closer. So Ron DeSantis, This is from Adam Laxalt. He tweeted out, Ron DeSantis dominates in the Daily Mail poll for the third Republican presidential debate, proving his strong leadership and vision for America. He said DeSantis versus Haley, who had the better debate? 56% said DeSantis, 35% said Nikki Haley, 9% I don't know. So they did a binary.
And just so you know, Adam Laxalt was a Senate candidate in the 2022 cycle that was actually endorsed by Trump and DeSantis.
In what state?
Nevada.
Okay.
So just so for context, he is a political.
He's a player. Who is best to go against Donald Trump? 53% said DeSantis, 29% said Nikki Haley, 18% said I don't know. And that is interesting that they asked head-to-head questions on Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, because I think that those are the only two serious candidates in that were on that debate stage. The poll also found, according to the article, that DeSantis beat Haley when viewers were asked to view the debate as a head-to-head contest. So it's interesting that they went for that in the poll, because what Washington Post did was probably a cheap push poll, but they were serious. So I thought that was interesting. So anyway, that covers the polling of the debate. I think the polling was less useful after this debate than it was for the previous debates. And I'm not big on polling in the cycle at all. I think most of it is really bad polling. If your poll says that, Joe Biden is pulling 42% in a swing state, not happening. Fake poll. Throw it in the trash.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how Trump is going to win either like Michigan or a Pennsylvania. Again, very difficult states, very bad Republican parties, and Michigan's just bad because the machine is awful, and Pennsylvania is very fractured because you got basically New York on the west, or New York, but yeah, Philadelphia, which is basically like rhino country, New York, Atlantic coast rhinos. You have Pittsburgh, and then you have like Alabama in the middle, as they like to call it. So very fractured in Pennsylvania versus Michigan is just a bad machine.
Yeah, I think as far as the 2024 goes, I have yet to see a convincing pathway for Trump to win and get 270 votes, electoral college votes. I've yet to see a convincing pathway, because it would require Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin. And we've done in Arizona, and I'm not sure he can do all those or any of those, because Arizona is moving to the left somewhat. And it wasn't the strongest conservative bastion, and it has a very fractured Republican Party that needs a candidate that can unite the McCains and the Kelly Ward sides of the party.
No, the other thing going against them in Arizona is Carrie Lake potentially being on the ticket.
No, Carrie Lake's running for Senate.
Yeah, I know, but down ballot. She could be an anchor on the down ballot, though.
Yeah, imagine if you're a McCain Republican, you should be voting for Republican. You should be submitting, bending the knee to the conservatives in the Republican Party and holding your nose to save America. That's the position I want them in. But why are they going to show up when it's Donald Trump and Carrie Lake on the ticket? They're not going to show up for that. My thoughts. So I don't think that's a winning combo in Arizona. I don't want Carrie Lake to win, because there is no shine on that car, if you know what I'm saying. And she has a transmission issue, if you know what I'm saying, if you catch my drift. Because she is extremely licentious. She's a social liberal who pretended to be socially conservative. but she's all about the drag queens and stuff like that and hanging out at drag bars. That's Carrie Lake. So she's a fraud, my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, so you have potential hurdles. And again, I mean, I do think DeSantis puts Virginia back in play, and
Nevada in play.
yeah, Nevada's more in play. Though maybe the machine there is gonna get its act together. Who knows?
No, because the Harry Reid machine's falling apart in Nevada. If anything, the momentum's shifting in the Republicans' favor in Nevada.
I mean, they have a Senate race as well.
So, but what's interesting about the Senate race in Arizona is it's going to be a three-way race. So Republicans should clean that up. But we need to overperform to win the presidential election in Arizona as well. So even if Carrie Lake is on the ticket, I still think she wins. Although she's alienated a lot of people. So I think her brand has taken massive hit from losing the election and losing ugly. And I don't think people are going to vote, as many people are going to vote for her this time around. So she's a terrible candidate in my mind. In everything, in every respect except name ID. So, Sam Raza says Trump is doing better in swing states because Joe Biden is actively collapsing in the poll. And I don't think that's really true at all. I think these polls are kind of fake.
Well, I mean,
because they're showing Biden they're showing Biden below 44%. I don't consider that real.
I mean, I think they'll show up for Biden regardless.
Now, one thing that's not being factored into the polls is a RFK third-party candidacy.
But we don't know how
serious it's going to be.
We don't know how potent that is right now.
I don't think that's going to help Trump because the Democrats are a hive mind. They vote in lockstep.
And that's why those polls can't be trusted. They will come out and vote for the abortion candidate. They'll vote in machines, they'll ballot harvest. They'll do what they have to do.
And Trump is against ballot harvesting.
I mean,
he's got the votes, is what he said at a rally recently.
I mean, unless there's a major, I guess not turnout of certain voters in inner cities that doesn't get replaced in the middle of the night, then the Democrats will have their people show up on election day or before election day or after election day.
So Sebastian asked, no one's going to vote for RFK on the left, right? The Democrats are not going to defect for RFK. That's pretty evident in the Democrat primary. That's why he dropped out and is running as an independent, because they're not defecting for him. They're not going to defect on Biden for RFK. They're not doing that. They're going to pretend like he doesn't exist, which is what these polls are doing, actually. So, at least the ones that don't include him. Now, the ones that do, and I don't know how much we can gauge from that. And the general election isn't going to be like the polls for the general election don't matter as much right now. But I'm not sure the primary polls can be trusted either. I mean, Joe Biden's a generic Democrat because he's a vegetable. And yes, he's going to be their guy. They're not going to jettison Joe Biden. He has a hood pass.
I mean, let's just be honest.
They can't run Pete Buttigieg. He has no hood pass. Gavin Newsom, that ain't gonna fly. Or they're not gonna let him do that.
Oh,
they're gonna go back to John Kerry or Andrew Cuomo first. But
I mean,
they have hood passes.
Fetterman still won in Pennsylvania.
Exactly. They will vote for a vegetable. So his servant says, there are some stupid conservatives that think RFK is great. All they know about him is he hates jabs. It is disturbing. And I think it's a blind spot more so than it is stupidity.
I mean, I like RFK, but I'm not going to lie to myself about him.
He's pro-gun control. He's pro-abortion. That's a negative.
I mean,
So
he does, and RFK panders to blacks a lot. I mean, it's in his book. I mean, obviously, he had no problem calling conservatives racist for not wanting immigration, but he doesn't want it because he's more compassionate. So he kind of does that big Eva mentality, where it's not about the demographics and the crime and the degeneracy coming across the border. It's about he doesn't want people being unsafe in traversing Mexico. So,
yeah, he's not good on the border either.
well,
And
he might be, but he has
and
no problems taking shots at the
radical
Republicans.
environmentalists as well is also being brought up in the chat.
I don't know. I'm willing to hear out some of his stuff.
I'm not.
Well, when it comes to chemicals, things like that, yeah, I'm willing to
Okay,
anything.
you meant
Like,
that some.
yeah, like the
But,
big ag and things like that. I'm
but the
willing
climate change stuff, no.
no.
Not into that. Uh but yeah, so the other thing that has to be pointed out is I don't think Trump's likability has increased since 2020. So those are my thoughts. He's
But
not
no,
more likable now.
if he goes to jail, he'll get a hood pass.
No, he won't. Like that. Yeah, he's going to get 50% of the black vote if he gets
I've
convicted of a
actually seen
felony.
a poll that says that though, or heard about a poll. I'm just like, come on, they're lying to you.
I mean, they're just making up numbers. There's no way 50% of the black vote's going to go for Trump if he becomes a convicted felon. Like, this is nuts. That's a joke. Not even it's a funny joke. I will admit that. It is a funny joke, but no way. But so along those lines, I don't think if the polls are true that Biden is struggling in swing states, why aren't the rest of the Democrats struggling in swing states? Why did the Republicans get trounced in Pennsylvania this Tuesday? That's a swing state. They got trounced by 6 points. Is it because the MAGA voters unreliable? And if the MAGA voters unreliable, then why are we banking on them showing up on game day in 2024?
I don't think the MAGA voter is unreliable. I think the party
The
itself,
unique, okay, how about the unique?
party is unreliable.
But people still vote for the party, though. Is the party unreliable when you're voting for a ballot initiative? Like, that's not a Republican versus Democrat. That is, do you show up on game day?
Yeah.
That's all that election. That's all Ohio came down to was, who's showing up on game day? And the MAGA vote did not show up on game day. They are 10 points behind.
But again, is that the people that are, black pilled on the election? They don't think the system works, so they're abstaining from the system.
And who's encouraging that behavior? That'd be Donald Trump. He's encouraging people to be black pilled on elections. And if that's dissuading voters, then we cannot be chasing the same voters that he's dissuading. We need to find voters that are persuadable, which would be the independents, perhaps, or the suburban women. What's the coalition that actually shows up on game day? That's the vote that Republicans need to win. Those are the votes we cannot alienate. So 30% of Republicans are pro-abortion. I mean,
I might think it's closer to 20, but there is a sizable percent.
That would probably admit they're pro.
But it's the same sizable percent that would throw you into a jail cell for not taking a vaccine.
So let's send some questions in as we're going to start wrapping up the stream. I do want to talk a little bit. Like, I think let's talk about the race as it is right now in the primary, because we're speculating about the general. But there's a lot that's happened in the primary. Governor Kevin Stitt has endorsed Ron DeSantis, and then that was followed by Kim Reynolds, the governor of Iowa. So the Governor Stitt is Oklahoma. That's a Super Tuesday state, I believe. And then Governor Reynolds is Iowa. That's first in the nation caucus. I think that's those are really good endorsements to have. On the Trump side, he has the endorsements of McMaster's in South Carolina, Kristi Noem in South Dakota, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders just endorsed him in Arkansas. Am I missing any governors?
I'm sure you are, but obviously it's
Jim
not.
Justice, maybe?
I mean, it's not material right now. As far as Huckabee Sanders being popular and obviously a former Trump White House employee, so that's not surprising at all.
Yeah. Do you think the McMaster's endorsement is significant in South Carolina?
I mean, South Carolina is third.
It
They're
is the
third
third
at the.
state.
That's the only thing that's significant about South Carolina is that they bat third in the order. So I don't think.
I think Trump wins that without that endorsement.
Yeah,
He
but
won it pretty handily in 2016.
I mean, the most important thing for DeSantis to do is he has to win New Hampshire and Iowa. Otherwise, it is game over. You
I
have to
think
do both.
no, I don't think it's game over at all. Just because this primary could end really quickly, or it could be dragged out into
Yeah,
the
but you
convention.
got to knock out the first two
If
rounds.
Trump is convicted of a felony, that's kind of game over there.
Well, not if DeSantis can't get a single delegate out of. He needs to win the first two to actually show that he's serious. He can't just do Iowa, lose New Hampshire, then he will lose South Carolina. So now you're on a losing streak going into Super Tuesday.
I believe Nevada's fourth, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, if you start again, if you're on a 2-game losing streak before Nevada, that's a problem.
Okay, but let's say between South Carolina and Super Tuesday, Trump is convicted of a felony.
Yeah, that could very well. I mean, again, he has New York.
DeSantis has won Iowa, but lost New Hampshire and is on the 2-state losing streak. And I think DeSantis could win Nevada, but I'm not. Nevada is a caucus state, but it's also an incompetently run caucus state.
I mean, if that Alex Laxaw tweet is anything, maybe that's he'll get some of that.
DeSantis.
Yeah, maybe he'll get some help there.
So DeSantis is a very impressive ground game in Iowa. And I think if Trump is convicted, that's a death blow to his campaign, I think.
I mean, keep in mind, it's not the people on the internet that would be intimidated. It's the boomer.
The normies.
Yes,
I talk to these people. They are so pro-Trump, but they know they're going to have to find a new candidate if he's convicted because he won't be on the ballot. It's simple as that. If he's not going to be on the ballot, even if it drags out to the convention and he has the most delegates, the delegates are going to switch sides because they're not going to the Republican Party is not going to run someone who's can't get on the ballot in several states.
So yeah, I think a lot of people would be skittish. Again, we're talking about the weaker hands, not the
We're not talking about the diehards. We're talking about the normie boomer cons that think that that just want to win. I know these people. So I know these types of people, and they've done polling that suggests that that if Trump is convicted of a felony, he's going to lose support. Now, could he still win a primary race in his state after he gets convicted of a felony? Yes. But does he take a double-digit hit in the polls for that? Yes. So both could be true. He could have 45%. That's the arbitrary number because he's 45. He drops down to 35% if he's convicted of a felony. I think that's a conservative estimate. Someone could surpass that and win and make it a very competitive primary moving forward.
But he has New York in December as far as
I know he has one of these he's in court right now, but that's a civil suit, right?
Yeah, that doesn't.
But I believe the felony cases start going in January. That's what I thought.
And then Tuesday is
I'm not tied to this because court dates generally get pushed back.
Well, but the March one is the DC case, which is a guaranteed conviction.
Guaranteed conviction in DC. Guaranteed conviction, I think, in New York. I think Trump gets off in Florida. And I think Trump... I don't like Trump's chances in Georgia right now. because they're trying it as a RICO. They're getting people to flip. Now, how useful can that be? I don't know. So, Sebastian says Nevada has some base Republicans, but Vegas is awful. Hobos everywhere. Cops don't do anything. I've never been to Las Vegas, but yeah, was it Clarks County is their hub? But Republicans can win that or can make that competitive enough. You saw that with Lombardo, or that's the governor, right?
Yeah.
Lombardo. Adam Laxalt just couldn't do it enough, but maybe he should try again. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
But
probably
I think
not.
DeSantis could win Nevada because he plays well in suburban areas. Trump says that he won Nevada, 2 times already. I don't think this is not the same Trump. It just isn't. He's having Joe Biden moments on a daily basis now. And then here's a question. Will the Trump voters even vote for anyone other than Trump? The Trump supporters think anyone other than Trump is part of the system. That's true on the internet. That is true on the internet.
A lot of people might run their mouth until the ballot is DeSantis v. Biden. Then they'll vote DeSantis.
So actually, let's flip this back. 2016, how many never Trumpers on social media voted for Trump on game day? I saw those posts, actually. The Supreme Court is too important. Got to do it. I know I was never Trump, but the Supreme Court's too important. Got to do it. You don't think that these same arguments will happen the other way? I think DeSantis could unify. I don't think Nikki Haley does. I won't vote for Nikki Haley. I can tell you that. If Trump's on the ballot, he might piss me off enough to not vote for him. But as of right now, I guess I'm a tentative voting for Trump. But I don't, there's certain candidates I can and can't vote for. Like Tim Scott, sure, because whatever, but he's not a serious candidate. Nikki Haley's a no for obvious reasons. I won't vote. And then Trump is definitely threatening. The more he wants to go pro-abortion and not know what a gender is. I think that threatens whether I want to even bother. But I live in Maryland, so my vote's not consequential to the Electoral College. So, you got any thoughts on that question on the never or the only Trump vote? You think that's just internet fluff?
I mean, yeah, kind of what you just said about that. It's all never Trumper until you find a reason to hold your breath and then vote, take a shower. So I mean, especially if those people live in swing states, then they're going to find a reason. And then a lot of those same like Trumpers will flip if DeSantis wins. Will all of a sudden flip their loyalties. So there'll be a huge like Charlie Kirk will be DeSantis country now instead of MAGA country. So
because the grift is strong.
yes.
And just on that, we have a billionaire leader of the Republican Party, but we have constant funding disadvantages. Can we just point out the irony there? I mean, I get that that's not going to change because there's a lot of billionaire Bolsheviks out there.
Well, let's just point out the fact that he actually made a statement at the Federal Reserve last night.
So let me posit the question before we tie into that, because I was thinking that too. DeSantis could win the general election if he went more populist economically. I read that as a do you think? But yes, I mean, I think he is. You can comment on the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I mean, he took a huge jab at the Federal Reserve, basically being responsible for making the economy worse, which they have.
I mean, they increased interest rates before wages were about to naturally increase.
I mean, basically, if they had done nothing, yeah, you might have had a little bit of a spike
You would have had at least an increase.
You
in
would have had
wages.
you would have had a market correction. The problem is twofold. Government spending pushes basically the money supply higher, and the banks raising interest rate or the raising interest rate just crushes the middle class. Again, it's a tax. Interest is a tax.
Man, I want to get a discussion about usury going on, but I don't know how usury applies when we have money with inflation because they didn't have like the way that when the Bible was written, the way that you inflated the economy was you dilute the gold content in your coin. That was how you inflated. You would debase your currency, and very bad idea, Rome. So that's why usury was bad, right? But we don't have that, so we need to have a biblical discussion on that. Sam Riza follows it up with DeSantis needs to go fool Josh Hawley if he wants to win the Rust Belt. I think DeSantis wins Ohio anyway. Indiana is a win anyway because Indiana is kind of as red as Texas is. So the states you're talking about are Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I don't think DeSantis wins Pennsylvania. I don't think DeSantis wins Michigan. I do think DeSantis can win Wisconsin. And I think DeSantis could win Arizona and Nevada, and potentially his ceiling does include Virginia. So,
yeah, I mean, how many of those, very populist on the right, they want some anti-Federal Reserve talking points, and DeSantis is actually feeding into that. And Trump can't. He appointed Jerome Powell. That is, I mean, that's like saying bashing the CDC.
Ronna McDaniel.
That's like bashing Anthony Fauci when you let him linger for a year and gave him a medal on your way out. But yeah, he hired Jerome Powell. So that's a huge avenue for DeSantis to exploit. So I was very satisfied seeing him go down that road last night.
Yeah, I mean, I like again, end the Fed. If you end the Fed, you can get rid of the national debt. I don't know why people don't, kind of put that one together. Because who owns the national debt? It's the Fed. So, anyway, I think that kind of wraps up tonight. I think it's going to be a long primary because I think it will be a protracted primary. I think DeSantis wins Iowa, but probably loses New Hampshire. But if he can, Ted Cruz finished in 4th place in New Hampshire. So if he finishes 2nd or maybe 3rd in New Hampshire, I would say he needs to come in 2nd place at least in South Carolina. I don't know. I think if Trump is, again, if Trump's convicted of a felony, it's a new primary, basically. And everyone's going to rally to say, especially in the states where if they've adjudicated this, he might even be removed from the primary ballot. In Minnesota, they determined that Trump can be on the primary ballot, but we're not sure about the general election ballot. How shady is that? So when do primary elections even start next year? I believe the Iowa caucus is January 15th.
Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah, I'm gonna look that up. So Republican.
It'd be the 16th or the 23rd. Unless it's on a Monday night.
No way they're doing it on a Monday.
Okay, then it would be the 16th. I don't know.
So let's do the schedule. So election dates. We got some big dates coming up.
January 15th, yes, Monday night.
Okay, so I call Monday night. They don't do that on Tuesday?
Yeah, weird.
So, yeah, January 15th, then it's game on. And I don't know when Trump's court dates are, but those are bound to get pushed back rather than moved up. because that's how court dates work. So anyway, I think that kind of covers all your questions. Any last questions? Nope. Anything on the Rumble side? Nope. Anyway, have a blessed night, and we will catch you on the next one.